All right, so today let's take a deep dive into something that might completely change how you think about real estate investing. We're talking about Section 8 housing. Yeah, you've probably heard about it, maybe even some of the whispers about guaranteed rent, straight from the government.
Right.
But then there's also the negative stuff you hear, difficult tenants, property damage, paperwork.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to break it all down today, separate the facts from the myths. You might be surprised by what we find.
It's true. There are some complexities when it comes to Section 8. But if you're willing to put in the work and learn the rules, it can be a really powerful tool
Yeah.
for building wealth and creating positive social impact, too.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. What exactly is Section 8 housing? It's more than just finding tenants, right?
Yes, exactly. Section 8 is a government program, and it's designed to help low-income families afford decent housing. It helps veterans and seniors, too. The government basically provides vouchers to these tenants, and they can then use them to subsidize a portion of their rent. And the best part, the housing authority sends the rent payment directly to the landlord.
Ah, so that's where the guaranteed rent thing comes from. But I'm guessing it's not as simple as just listing your property and waiting for the money to show up in your account.
You're right. It's not quite that easy. There's a definite process involved. And landlords really need to understand all the details. For instance, did you know that there are actually different types of Section 8 programs? The one you hear about most is the Housing Choice Voucher Program. But you can also find what are called project-based vouchers that are tied to certain properties.
Interesting. I have to admit, when I hear Section 8, I immediately think about all the negative stuff, all those stereotypes we talked about earlier. Our source actually said, you hear Section 8 and you think bad tenants, destroyed properties, or endless paperwork. So how much of that is true? And how much is just perception?
I mean, there's a little truth to those concerns, but it's often blown out of proportion. Like any rental situation, there are risks involved with Section 8. But you as the landlord have a lot of control.
Okay, so how can landlords reduce those risks and actually make Section 8 work for them?
One of the best tools you have is tenant screening. We're not just talking about running a credit check. It's more than that. Reaching out to previous landlords and asking about their experience with the applicant as a tenant. Section 8 tenant is key. Were they respectful of the property? Did they pay their rent on time? Things like that. These are all essential questions.
That makes sense. It sounds like you need to be proactive and really do your research.
Absolutely. And you set the standards for your property. You can establish clear expectations right in your lease agreement, outlining specific rules